All right. Hi, everybody. Welcome to our session on monitoring and managing harmful algal blooms on tribal lands. My name is Yeana Kwagh, and I'm the EPA Region 9 Harmful Algal Bloom Coordinator. So I'm really excited to speak with all of you today and sort of do like a build off from last year's session when I presented. It was a little bit more like basic 101 level, and this time I'm hoping to just kind of just skim through a lot of the basic stuff and give you just some more meaty information that's hopefully more helpful. And yeah, so I'll be speaking today with my colleague Matt Small, and as well as Paul O'Connor and Aaron Bill from the Big Lagoon Rancheria and Pyramid Lake Paiute tribe. So, yeah, so I will do a really high-level basic introduction just to make sure we're all on the same page about terminology and what we're most concerned about at EPA. Then we'll run through some resources that EPA has to offer in support of you all in understanding and addressing harmful algal blooms. But I'll preface that we're not going to go into a lot of detail since each of these programs have their own deep dive sessions throughout this conference, but the goal is more to just help you connect the dots on how these different programs that have how these different programs can sort of work together on different aspects of addressing harmful algal blooms. And so is this in presentation? Okay, so at the most basic level, harmful algal blooms, or HABs for short, are rapid overgrowths of photosynthetic organisms. So within HABs, there are two broad categories. There's marine HABs and freshwater HABs. And NOAA is the lead federal agency for marine HABs, which includes blooms like what is referred to as the red tide. EPA, we're the lead federal agency for freshwater HABs specifically. And within freshwater HABs, this can be further broken down into two distinct types. So golden algae, also known as Pernicium, is fairly common in the region, but is more often seen in Southern California and Arizona. And these affect organisms with gills and are usually the culprit of what causes mass fish kills when they bloom. However, they don't affect human health, mammals, or birds in the same way that cyanoHABs do, which is why cyanoHABs are the primary concern at EPA due to how it impacts human and animal health, environmental health, and economics. So the focus of this presentation is primarily on cyanoHABs. So we might say HABs throughout this presentation, but we're really referring to cyanoHABs. And the reason why I jumped the gun. Yeah, so cyanoHABs is also been known as blue algae due to its appearance, but it's not actually algae. It's an aquatic bacteria called cyanobacteria, hence the name cyanoHABs for short. And cyanobacteria have, the ability to photosynthesize, and they're actually really important parts of the food web. So not all cyanobacteria is bad, and not all blooms are in fact harmful. But the reason why we're concerned about cyanoHABs specifically is that they can have the ability to produce toxins, and that's where the public health concerns really come in. Sometimes cyanoHABs can be really visible and obvious in the water column, like the photos on the left side of the slide. This is what we're referring to as planktonic HABs. And these are commonly found in warm, quiet waters, such as lakes, reservoirs, backwaters. And on the right side of the slide are photos of benthic HABs, which are found actually in clear water, and the toxins can often be contained in these mats that can detach and be released to the surface and moved by winds and currents. This is a really great graphic on the screen that was developed by the Big Valley Band of Homa Indians and the Karuk tribe that I like to share because it shows various exposure pathways based on the tribal cultural uses. And exposures to cyanoHABs can be direct or indirect contacts such as submersion or consumption of contaminated water, or the use and trade of plants or animals that have been in contact with cyanohabs. And to zero in on, again, like why cyanohabs is concerning is that these toxins, they can affect various organs and body parts. Some really common cyanotoxins include microcystin, cylindrospermopsin, anatoxin, and saxitoxin. And so my colleague Matt Small will speak to some of those in greater detail later. But cyanotoxins, when exposed, can cause especially serious illness or death for pets, livestock, wildlife. And for humans, it can make people sick and experience things like rashes, irritation, discomfort in the skin, eyes, lung, and stomach. So that is my sort of very quick spiel on the basics of HABS 101. And with resources, again, I'm just going to breeze through these very quickly since, again, there's deeper dive sessions. Look at the recordings if you weren't able to attend them. I think there's another standards one right after in this room as well. But for starters, Clean Water Act 106, Section 106 of the Clean Water Act authorizes EPA to provide financial assistance to eligible agencies to establish and administer programs for prevention, reduction, and elimination of water pollutants. Many tribes have leveraged this particular assistance to fund especially their water quality monitoring for works such as quality assurance plan development, purchase of equipment, lab analysis, or staff salaries even. But it's also eligible, other eligible uses can include outreach and education, as well as training and travel. The 319 program is also known as the non-point source program, which provides financial assistance for implementation of watershed projects and non-point source strategies. And so some eligible activities can include restoration projects like riparian restoration, planting, wetland restoration, and things related to like stormwater runoff or like source water protection. When it comes to developing water quality standards, I know oftentimes tribes may not have all the resources to work on standards from start to finish. And so NSTEPS is a service that EPA offers that I just wanted to spotlight a little bit, and it's available to you to help with all levels of water quality standard development. NSTEP stands for the EPA Nutrient Scientific Technical Exchange Partnership and Support. Very grateful for acronyms. And it's an agency-wide program, and it connects you with technical experts with experience developing criteria. So for example, if you have, say, like narrative criteria that's very broad, such as, quote, like maintaining no nuisance algae, but would like those to be in specific numbers, NSTEPS is a program that can be helpful for translating narrative criteria related to HABs and nutrients into numbers that can be used for monitoring and assessment. And if your tribe has have exposure concerns for drinking water, there are 2 financial assistance programs that can fund drinking water projects to address cyanotoxins in your systems. They are called the Emerging Contaminants for Small and Disadvantaged Communities. And the second one is Drinking Water Tribal Set-Aside Emerging Contaminant Funding. And both these programs are really good for general activities and necessary and appropriate for tribes to respond to emerging contaminants, including cyanotoxins in your water systems. And so I know Sarah McGillie's over there. She's a great point person to talk to. And there's a bunch of folks from our EPA team actually so when in doubt, feel free to just come up to me after this session. I have a business card and can connect you to other folks. But there's a QR code also for additional information on the drinking water programs. See. Okay, I'm going to hand it off to my colleague Matt Small.
Okay, thank you, Yeana. Wow, a lot of people here now that I turn around. This is great. Thanks everyone for coming in. I'm Matt Small. I'm the Regional Science Liaison for EPA Region 9 here out of the San Francisco office. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit about managing the risks of contact with harmful algal blooms this is non-drinking water exposure. I'm talking about contact with the water, physical contact, not drinking water, not actually drinking the water that's impacted by the HABs. And my daughter came in and said, "What are you working on, Dad?" And I said, "A presentation." She said, "Cool, green slime." I said, "Well, that's actually not very cool." It's a problem. So, am I hitting the right button? There we go. So what are the risks? You can see there's a lot of risks associated with HABs. Prolonged skin contact, wet clothes. That was something I learned as I was putting this presentation together. Even just wet clothes can be a problem over time. Can cause issues from mild rashes to serious illnesses, in some cases death. Mainly we've seen pets dying from skin contact, not so much people, but we have seen people get quite sick from skin contact when the blooms are at their maximum. So I think for tribes, there's increased potential for direct contact, particularly if you're looking at cultural activities, recreation and swimming. I think that certainly impacts everyone, but fishing and food gathering, particularly if you're looking at subsistence fishing or subsistence food gathering, make sure that you're not contacting water that's going to be a problem, and the water's not getting on what you're collecting. I think various tribal lifeways and practices that may involve surface waters, you need to consider if it's appropriate to do those when there's algal blooms, ceremonies, those types of things. Livestock can also be injured or even killed. Fish consumption can be an issue, and I'll mention that in a moment. Again, this is contact, not drinking the water. Okay. So what are some possible solutions? Well, really increased awareness and information. That's what's helping most people avoid problems with contacts with HABs. Public information notices. Here's an example of a warning notice: blue-green algae. Please do not swim or allow dogs to enter the water. Outreach, addressing the causes of HABs. We're talking about reducing nutrient loads, increasing stream flows, higher temperatures, increased nutrients, lower flows. Those are the things that are really creating HABs and HABs, making the environment for HABs to bloom. So tribal-specific HAB response plans are also an option. If you have a lot of issues with HABs on your tribal lands and your surface waters, you can do specific training, monitoring, and testing for your program. You can have certain surface water use restrictions during blooms, and you could potentially even put together tribal-specific fish consumption criteria. So you might ask, if this will work. Here we go. How dangerous is this stuff, Matt? Well, it's fairly dangerous. You can see we've got microgram per liter levels in the EPA advisory and in the California advisories. And comparing these to the drinking water 10-day health advisories from EPA, you can see they're roughly about double to 10 times the levels of the drinking water advisories. So it's pretty dangerous stuff. Here's some of the compounds that Yeana mentioned earlier. So EPA and California recreational HAB water criteria listed here. This will be on the website. You can get this later, or I'm happy to send you a copy of this. All of these links are live in my presentation. So you might, so we have online communications toolboxes. We've got the criteria. California's got information online. There's a lot of information out there, so you're not alone. And then you might ask, so what about this issue with fish, Matt? Well, we have recommended that we have, just this year, we came out with a list of recommended contaminants to monitor for fish and shellfish consumption advisory programs. This is a new list, and you can see we've got flame retardants, metals, PFAS, and cyanotoxins, specifically microcystins. These are chemicals to monitor. These are ones to watch. We don't have toxicity data for those chemicals on the far right-hand side, but you should be watching for those. We think they're dangerous as well, but these are ones we think you should be monitoring for right now. And we have, we've added the When concentrations are high enough to affect health, advisory programs can really help people from being impacted. And we have come out with guidance for developing fish advisories. So tribes can develop their own fish advisories, and you can incorporate whatever water uses are important to you, whatever tribal issues are important to you. This information is available online. I'm happy to share that with you and give you more information. We're also offering, Region 9 is offering laboratory analysis. I know a lot of people are trying to figure out, are HABs a problem? The Region 9 lab is currently providing 14-day turnaround microcystin analysis for these tribes: Karuk, Hupa, Yurok, Piglagoon, Rancheria, and Pulikla tribe of Yurok. Typically FASTA at 14 is our commitment right now. And if you want more information on laboratory analysis, see Yeana. And that's it for me. Thank you. I'm going to turn it over to Paul. This advances the slides.
Wow. Okay. Good afternoon. I am Paul O'Connor from Big Lagoon Rancheria, and I am very thankful that they asked me to come down and talk to you all. I am basically a water tester, and I don't have a bunch of really nice things. I did bring a bunch of pictures of algae, but I think you've seen a few pictures of algae already, and some nice pictures of some elk and otters, because that's what I see every morning when I go out there. What? I don't think they need to see the photos. Anyway, I was writing this up. They asked me to do this, and it's been kind of hectic and last minute. But as I was writing up my notes, the one thing kept coming up, and that was there are a lot of resources out there, and use them all. There's resources of every kind. And so I'm going to talk about 3 different things that they asked me to speak on, and they all come down to the same thing. There are resources out there to use. So anyway, Big Lagoon is a very unique water system because it's a lagoon. It's half the time it's tidal, half the time it's freshwater, and always a mix of the two. So you have algae that are, predominant in brackish water, and you have the algae in freshwater. It depends on the year. I mean, like this year, it was tidal almost the entire summer. So there was never, ever a problem with any harmful algae. Most years, it's not. Most years, it breaches and fills back up and slowly fills up with fresh water. And there's algae everywhere. But Big Lagoon is a 3.5 mile by 3 mile by 1.5 mile lagoon, which is very large. And we share it with a county park, a campground, county campground, a state park, and state forests. So there is a lot of recreational use. It's used recreationally by a lot of people. And so having the grant and being able to test has really helped out the community as a whole, because boaters, kayakers, swimmers, hunters, fishermen, the Coast Guard train in it. So being able to test for algae and know when there's harmful blooms has been very, very beneficial to the whole community, really. The grant is the first thing I'm going to talk about, and we applied for the grant in 2003. So we've been doing this for quite a while. I've only been doing it for the last 9+ years. But they were doing it because people were getting sick, dogs were getting sick, and they applied for the grant, and in 2003 they got accepted. And it's been great. I mean, it was allowed us to buy the sand and purchase equipment, hire people like me. And over the years, I mean, you have to renew the grant, and there's been like the Young's office has been helpful. Loretta has been really helpful in making sure that we have all our ducks in order as we renew our grants. And then you run into problems. I mean, like labs, the price of the lab fees go up year after year after year. And you have to go ask them to amend your SAP and see, and there's always help there. Every time I've talked to these people, they've been helpful. And then, so there's help in the EPA. There's help through the grant. We've had to update. We've had to replace equipment. We had to replace the sun, which was horrible. But this is the CWA 106 grant that I'm speaking of. And that's the grant that we've been using since 2003. And really, we've had to amend, I mean, because the water changes. And you need to update it periodically. Okay, and the other thing is that we have been using their lab. That has been a real blessing. That saves us a lot of money. And they have just relocated, so last year's been a little chaotic, but Jamie, who is the coordinator for the lab, has been so fantastic through all this. She's like a little angel sometimes. And if you ever have any questions, call her. She is so happy to give all the answers. These people have the answers. Use the resource. Okay. And the last thing is just the grant has really made the whole community safer. The swimmers, the kayakers, I mean, everybody benefits from what we do. We're the only ones who actually monitor this body of water. And sometimes I'll go up and do Stone Lagoon for the state of California too. And otherwise, I mean, nobody's testing these waters, and there's algae in them often. And it's been interesting because when I started this, I mean, oh shoot, I am so sorry. I have, sorry, my wife's in surgery right now. Yeah, hang up. Where was I? The grant has allowed a safer experience for all the users. But when I started this, I mean, when we tested and there was algae, it was word of mouth. I had to go to the community and tell them, go to the county, there's blue-green algae in the lagoon. And they go, how do you know? And so it was a fight to try to notify everybody. I mean, the people on the rancheria obviously knew right away, but to get it out to the rest of the community was not as easy as you think it would be. But in the last few years, the state of California has been receiving all of my testing through probably you. And that has made a world of difference. I mean, they're the ones that call the county. I mean, they send them results to the county every week. and I don't have to do anything anymore, which is really nice. I just have to test, and working together has been very beneficial. And that's another resource that I call them and talk to them. They're helpful too, because they have all the interests we have in making sure that the lagoon stays safe. And it's just been very helpful. So that's another resource that use your county, use the resources in your environment. The state, the county, the EPA. Okay, now I'll talk a little bit about sampling. I've done that for a long time now, and it's got to be one of the best jobs in the world. It really is, just paddling around on a lagoon early in the morning with the otters and the elk. But there are challenges too. I like it most of the time. On really windy and rainy days, not as much fun. But with sampling algae, it is interesting because of the dynamics between the saltwater and the freshwater. Some years, if it's mostly saltwater, there's no problem at all. There's no algae anywhere. There never will be. But like I said, most years the spit seals up and fresh water pours in all year. And the more fresh water and the hotter the temperatures, you're going to get algae. And sometimes it's invasive. But most of the time, which is really interesting, I find it in dime and nickel size. And that is unusual. And then sometimes, the highest hit I've ever had with algae was in crystal clear water. Not a sign of any blooms anywhere near it. So it's there. It may be, because I only test once every other week. So you never know what's happening between then. So even if you don't see algae, even if you're looking for algae and you don't see it, test the water. If that's your test spot, test it. Because like when I first started, I'd go, oh, there's an algae. And if it was ugly, I was going, that must be harmful algae. But that's not necessarily true either, because she was showing pictures of algae here that I see all the time that's not toxic at all, but it looks just like the toxic stuff. So just go to your sites, test, and I could show you a bunch of pictures of non-toxic algae that look just like the toxic ones, but I'm not going to bother doing that. Well, there's some. Anyway, the last thing I'm going to talk about is the community, because I've been out there for a long time, and there are really regular people that kayak and swim. There's a group of women who swim, they'll swim 3 miles down, 3 miles back. And some boaters, some people who rode. And because I only do this every other week, I can rely on them. And also, I only test like 1/3, hang it up. 1/3 of I'm supposed to turn that off. 1/3 of the lagoon. So I don't know what's happening on the other parts of the lagoon all the time. And these people will paddle out there and they'll report back of what's going on. If there's some really toxic algae blooms, I can go out because they'll say, these are out there. They'll take pictures for me. So you rely on everybody. It's a community thing. Everybody benefits from the bodies of water that we test and run, and rely on everybody. There's so many resources out there, and I think that use them all. I mean, they're there, use them. Use every resource possible. Anyway, that's it for me. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Aaron Bill. I am employed by the Pyramid Lake Paiute Tribe. I'm also a member. I was asked to speak to you all today about our experiences with monitoring our blooms that we have. So I want to start with an overview of our watershed. So it's not. I'm trying to go back. Yeah. First of all, I want to talk to you about the watershed. So Pyramid Lake is a desert endorheic terminal lake. As we are situated in the high desert of northern Nevada, we are part of the ancient Lake Lahan. Ancient Lake Lahan stretched from California all the way almost to Utah, and it was a large inland sea. And we know that it is because we have fossils out in the desert of huge fish from the prehistoric era. I should have included a photo because it's dramatic, but shoot. I'm sorry, I'm having the hardest time with this. Okay. So the Truckee River is supplied by Lake Tahoe, which is a alpine lake of old ancient wonder. So the flows that come from Lake Tahoe are freshwater in nature, but due to Pyramid Lake being the last remnant of Lake Lahan, we have really captured all of the ions that exist in the basin. So we're talking carbonates, we're talking sulfates. We have a mixture of metals within the water. Molybdenum is one of them, and that's because there is some mines that have been leaching some of their waters into the lake. Pyramid Lake is high in salinity because of those ions that I mentioned. And so when you're talking about the total alkalinity, we're about a gram per liter. And that is mostly composed of calcium carbonate, as well as bicarbonate. And we also have high salinity waters. So we have 2 grams per liter of sodium. Within the watershed, nitrogen is a limiting reagent. So that's one thing that we're always watching out for on the river, because as the Truckee River flows into Pyramid Lake, it is mostly freshwater, but there are some dischargers that exist. So the Truckee Meadows Water Reclamation Facility, they discharge about 40 cubic feet per second of their discharge. So now within the water quality program, we use Clean Water Act 106 funding for this. We incorporated it within our monitoring program. So as a water quality program developed from the fisheries department, they were mainly focused on the Pyramid Lake itself. We, in the water quality program, began those activities around the 2000s, where we incorporated surface water monitoring of the Truckee River. Now, it's important for us to be out on the lake during the summer recreation season, because that is when the blooms happen. As a kid, I can remember that the bloom, we used to call it the lake turnover. but it happens later and later in the year now. So that means that the species that's mostly responsible for the blooms is Nodularia spumigena. We have a monoculture within the lake where that only exists. So within our monitoring program, we do weekly site observations at 3 of our most popular beaches. And that helps us get, an idea of what baseline, what the normal background site conditions will look like. When we do suspect a bloom, it comes on rather slow. It doesn't appear as a full bloom until weeks into the growth. So as you can see here, the bloom on the left-hand picture is normal site conditions, and then when the bloom does happen, the water appears like split pea soup. It's green in appearance, and it's got sometimes it has a foul odor depending on how intense the bloom is. So here you can see that there's some scum on the water. When you look at the water itself, it appears to be like angel hair in appearance. So we developed a cyanobacteria response plan, and that was largely borrowed from the Yurok tribe. We incorporated the California danger thresholds that was shown earlier. And within our response plans, it calls for a rapid investigation where we suspect a bloom. And most likely, this will be triggered when we're out doing our field observations, and we use these test strips that we can have a detection, yes or no. And when we do have a positive confirmation, then we send the sample over to Ben Genetics Laboratory in Sacramento, and they help with largely a genetic analysis and enumeration. So we've had some tests come back that were greater than 20 parts per billion, or micrograms per liter. And sometimes testing does take longer because they have to develop the right dilution scheme. And so typically, it's not uncommon to get test results back 2 to 3 weeks after we do our sampling, which is a problem because our response plan calls for us to do weekly sampling after that. But the problem with that is that we don't get the initial results back. It's expensive, and like I said, it takes time. So usually what we do is we try to initial caution. We have initial caution level where we put the word out to tribal social media, and that's been really helpful to really reduce the amount of phone calls that come in to us. Pyramid Lake is a year-round recreation destination. We have fishing from October to June, and of course, we got the summer recreation season. So with positive confirmation of greater than 10 parts per billion, that raises the alert level to danger. At that point, we would consider beach closures. Really, that depends on what type of the year it is, because we're most likely going to take action during the summer, where there's a lot of people. The fisherman community, they're actually pretty good about knowing what the site conditions are. And when we had our opening for our fishing season this year, we also had a bloom. And so we were working with our aquatic invasive species station staff. They do checks for the types of aquatic invasive species, and they are like our first line of getting the word out to people who come through. It is a mandatory check that you have to go through when you come to the Pyramid Lake. So some of the lessons learned and the challenges from monitoring cyanobacteria, the timeline of sampling and getting the results takes time. The tribal reach to notify people over tribal social media and local media, they pick up the stories that we put out. It's not enough to inform everyone. And so unfortunately, there is that one person who may not know, and we've had a couple of reports of dog illnesses. So we take the time to publish a weekly site condition bulletin. We try to do it on Fridays to catch the weekend folks, and then we also publish it on Monday. And we really want to, to alert everybody, because I think that's like the most important step. So with us, we only look for one toxin produced by one specimen due to the monoculture, but we're not sure what exists upstream. We've had reports of people calling saying that they've seen blooms at Tahoe. There was a dog death that happened in a lake around Tahoe, and that unfortunately, generates a lot of news, brings a lot of eyes, but it doesn't always, give the full story. The conditions of the blooms can change rapidly due to changes among inputs. And what I mean by that is within our lake, the bloom that we just had, it was kind of cut short in that we had 2 prolonged days of raining. And when the precipitation made it into the delta, it kind of diluted the system and caused the activity to stop in the southern part of the lake. But in the northern part, it continued to build. And you could actually see that on the website that we use. Are you familiar with the fhab.sfei.org? It's the San Francisco Estuary Institute. They have a tool, a website that we could look, and they have a satellite that looks at the I guess it's the pigments that are produced from the cyanobacteria. And that's been real helpful for us to do monitoring offsite. And finally, the need for scientific understanding for better program performance is apparent. We don't know everything that we need to know. Having more information could give us better tools for prognosticating, when the lake would go under the change. And looks like that's my last slide. So I want to thank everyone for being here. Thank you.
Thank you, Aaron and Matt, and Paul went good to go answer that call in case people were nervous for him and on what the phone call may be. So hopefully everything's okay with his wife. But I think we have about 5 minutes left for any questions. Can someone get mics around, please?
Thanks. Hi, that was awesome. I just wanted to flag, I'm from the California Water Board, and a lot of references to the California HAB program were mentioned through all of your slides. I also gave a virtual presentation about our surface water ambient monitoring programs that breaks down tribal specific resources for HAB monitoring, including training, online guides, resources. It's coming from California, but y'all got the internet. So if you're outside of California and want to reuse and remix our guidance or video trainings, please do. And if you have questions about anything, please come chat.
Thank you. Oh, we have a hand over here.
Thank you. I have a question for Matt and also for Aaron. So Matt, my question for you is, you were talking about the tribal specific fish consumption criteria for HABs. And I know that in California with OEHA, that they've been kind of reticent to develop advisories for HABs because they say it takes 18 months to do a fish advisory, and that cyanotoxins don't bioaccumulate like methylmercury does in fish. And so there seems to be a big question about, how long that cyanotoxins are in fish. So I'm just wondering if you have some thoughts about that.
Yeah, I don't have the answer to that. I apologize. I'm just starting to learn about this too because we just came out with this fish consumption and shellfish consumption advisory this year and just added the cyanotoxins to it. Do you know more about that, Yeana? So we're learning. I don't know the duration of cyanotoxin in fish, but I think you would want to alert people if you have blooms and you know that there's impacts to the water. You would want to notify the fishing community as well. And that's why that's why I was directing you to the guidance that EPA has put out on actually putting together fish consumption advisories. So there's a lot more detailed information in that on how to go through specific steps to understand what the impacts may be to the fish species in your area. And that's the reason why EPA has put that guidance out there, because there can be big differences in the way the fish accumulate these various cyanotoxins, and you may want to avoid one species versus another, and so that's why you may want to think about tribally specific guidance. And it takes a while, you're right, but there's steps that we have in the guidance to go through to understand what may be appropriate for your fish species in your location.
Okay, that sounds good. And then Aaron, for you, you mentioned how to, I'm just looking at the slide, how to determine, sorry. Okay. Yeah, if there was upstream blooms, right? I'm wondering, have you guys done, either had spat bags in, like at the mouth of the Truckee and Pyramid Lake, or done grab samples that have done qPCR for all 4 toxins just to see, or for gene copies, right? Just to see if there might be other toxins coming into the lake from the Truckee. Because it's very interesting to me that you only have one species of cyanobacteria. And I mean, how easy. We've got about, I don't even know, 50 different species in Clear Lake, or maybe less than that. But yeah, I'm just wondering if you've done spat bags and qPCR.
No, we haven't. We've only kept our activities on the reservation, but it would be good to have that data. We share data with our upstream partners.
Yeah.
So we largely rely upon them to, have that data, but it doesn't always happen, so did you have another part of that question?
No, that's it. Thank you.
Oh, I know we might be at time, but do we have a chance for one more question over there? Okay, great. Got a thumbs up. With the person with the hat, yeah.
Hello, thank you for your presentation. That was actually really good. Dakota Perez, I'm from the Yurok tribe. I work for Pinoleville Pomo Nation, running a water quality monitoring program, and kind of recently getting into HABs. Thank you to Sarah Ryan. She does a lot of HABs work over in Clear Lake. But we've experienced on the Klamath River a ton of really bad fish die-offs due to HABs. Has there been any really bad fish die-offs recently in Pyramid Lake due to HABs?
The answer is no, because like I said, we have limited nitrogen. So that really keeps the green algae. It keeps the green algae growth regulated. So there's not a lot. It's different on the Truckee River though, because there is a higher ratio of nitrogen available. So I'm thinking, there are some areas on the river that there is extra algae, but we haven't seen any mass die-offs.
Oh, that's good. Thank you for your presentation. Oh.
All right, well, thank you, everyone. Again, if you have follow-up questions, or if we zoom too fast on some slides that you have more questions about, feel free to come up and chat with me. I have business cards, and I'm really happy to connect you with anyone within our agency or other tribes who might have similar experiences that you're concerned about. So thanks.
Thank you so much. You were great. Thank you.